welcome to NumismaTalks. Every second and fourth Thursday of the month at noon Mountain, we will be here with a presentation. During this presentation, you may come up with questions. If you do, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to send in your question, and we will answer those at the end. Your question, you're obviously all muted and can't speak, so please just pop that in there. Now I would like to introduce you to today's presenter, Phil Vitale. Phil is a retired lead engineer, program manager, and career military officer. Phil is now a full-time numismatist working with the Albuquerque Coin Club and as a district representative for the ANA. He is a numismatic scholar, the editor of the award-winning Pocket Change newsletter, and presenter of several NumismaTalks for the ANA. Phil will be presenting works of art, large-size silver certificates. And Phil, it's all yours.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen because they're not interested in me. They're interested in what I'm going to say. There we go. With any luck. Okay, so we have the stock entry slide. And thank you very much. And everybody can see my screen. If anybody can't see my screen, yell and scream or whatever. So
it looks good, Phil.
All right. Well, thank you. So I have my own lead in. I am Phil Vitale from the Albuquerque Coin Club, and as of late, the national coordinator for district representatives. I'm going to talk to you about what I think are amazing works of art in money. So you'll be seeing this again. And let me get started. So I'm actually a coin guy at heart. I've been collecting coins, and I never got interested in paper money per se because modern U.S. notes are boring. That is my assessment of them. You can make your own assessments, not my problem. But I had been advised that collecting paper money is the sinkhole of all funds. And I think perhaps they may be correct in their assessment. So a number of years ago, I bought this note that's up here, running antelope, for my wife because she thought it was really neat. And I thought it was pretty beautiful. And when I finished completing my half-dime collection, I said, well, what do I want to do? What next? So I was drawn to the beauty and art of silver certificates, the old silver certificates, and I want to share them with you. So a little bit of historical background. The Coinage Act of 1873 ended the bimetallic standard. There used to be a standard of gold to silver, and our national worth was based on both. And it ended the production of silver dollars at the time. However, the trade dollars were being in production with the cheap silver that was out on the market. There were abundant silver strikes in Nevada in the 1850s. The prospectors in California moved east to Nevada, and they hit great amounts of silver ore. And the Comstock lode, which is this plaque here, by the way, Comstock lode is actually a mine that produced millions and millions of ounces of silver, and it led to a silver glut on the market. And of course, what happens when you have more supply than demand? The price goes down. So our Congress was figuring, we can get really cheap silver, in fact, almost as low as 70 cents an ounce. Really cheap silver, and make trade dollars to use in trade with the Orient. That wasn't to stay that way, but we'll press on forward. Okay, so we've got this great silver glut, and the congressmen and senators from the western states passed the Bland-Allison Act of 1878. The Treasury had to buy millions of ounces of silver every month, and millions of silver dollars were coined based on the requirements of the act. When I say millions of silver dollars, I'm talking about over the course of the run of silver dollars, which were almost entirely Morgan dollars. 670 million of them were coined. Give you an idea how much silver was coined. Silver certificates, there were a lot of people who were really angry that silver was no longer one of the benchmarks for our economy. And when the Bland-Allison Act came to be, now we have to coin lots and lots of silver. They came up with silver certificates, which was a way for people to own silver without actually having to hold the metal. All of the silver certificates were backed by silver coin, and they were redeemable at banks for silver coin. I remember my dad was a small businessman, and occasionally when I was a kid, I went with him and he'd take me to the bank, and they had a box of silver dollars there because they had to maintain a stock of silver dollars for people who came in with silver certificates. So in fact, it worked the way it was supposed to. Okay, so these certificates were made between 1878 and 1957. Initial issues were in bigger denominations. Didn't satisfy the people who were the common people who wanted to hold silver but didn't have big money. So denominations of $1, $2, and $5 were added in 1886. So I'm sorry about the beagle. She'll be moving on in a minute. So I don't know if all of you have seen large size money notes. They're bigger than what we have today. Those notes were 7 3/8 by 3 1/8, which is considerably larger than what we have today. And they had a lot of unique designs. So the issues from 1928 to 1957 were small size, and the designs followed the same designs as Federal Reserve currency. So with the exception of the fact that they said silver certificate on it, they looked the same as any other note. So about the designs on the silver certificates, large size silver certificates usually or many times had pictures of recently deceased officials on them. They have, I didn't believe this at first, they have 2 horizontal silk threads that run in them. They're really hard to see, you won't be able to see them on my illustrations here. But if you get one, take my word for it, you can in fact find the 2 threads that'll normally go above, in the middle, and across. And that's a great way, if you know what you're looking for, to tell whether it's genuine or not. So another interesting thing about silver certificates is the Bureau of Engraving and Printing frequently reused or reissued notes with the same front but a different reverse design. So I want to point out that this $10 note up here initially came out in 1886 with this reverse. In 1891, it was reissued with a different reverse. So just different reverse. So we have all of the silver certificates issues have unique reverses. just a quick note. I have a monthly spot on Fox News to talk about coins and currency. And yesterday I was on and I talked about the reverse of silver certificates and large size bills in general. And I said, today we're going to talk about backsides. So that was a good segue. People were listening. I'm not sure they knew what I was going to say, but they were listening. Anyway, so silver certificates had a lot of firsts. Everybody's clamoring to have a woman on one of our notes. Well, it's been done. It's been done with Martha Washington in 1886, where they made 72 million of them, and in 1891 with another 65 million, $1. So I happen to know in looking it up that one of the engravers, Charles Burt, and we'll talk about him later, was the primary engraver for this note. It's good stuff. Martha Washington, by the way, this is from a portrait painted of her, and it's an engraved representation of that portrait. So, by the way, talking about the reverses, I think that the reverses on silver certificates are almost as interesting, certainly almost more intricate than the obverse. By the way, they don't, people who grade paper money don't use obverse and reverse. They generally use front and back when you talk to them. And I said, what? Well, anyway, so they do. I don't know why, they just do. Silver certificate first, Native American featured on the face of notes. This is a very interesting note. Everybody, lots and lots of people have seen the running antelope note. This picture of running antelope, Tatuka and Yanka in Lakota Sioux. This picture was taken around 1880, and they decided they wanted to use it for this note. Unfortunately, they couldn't have the feathers sticking up. They took up too much room. So they did the first crude Photoshop and took a picture of a Pawnee headdress and matched it to the top of his head, eliminated the feathers. And you can actually see, if you look closely at this note, that's a piece metal, and it's the same picture with the addition of that headdress. So this bill got a lot of use. 556 million of them were printed over 20 years. This guy, GFC Simile, it's George, by the way. He never wanted to go by George, just GFC, was the primary engraver for this note, and it's a fabulous, fabulous piece of art, actually. It's the only one you'll see like it. Additionally, silver certificates in 1896 used a Greek revival motif on the face of them. And the $5 note is considered the most beautiful note produced by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. It's electricity presenting light to the world. So there's a story with this note. The society ladies in Boston thought it was sinful that the government would display nudity females on one of their notes. And they decided to pressure their husbands, who were the bankers and merchants in the city, not to accept them. So if you've ever heard the expression banned in Boston, this is where it comes from. So primary engravers were Tom Morris and George Simile. Another great job. So another first was the use of national symbols as central focus rather than presidents, although they did cave in and they have Lincoln's and Grant's president on the photos or vignettes on the bottom. This black eagle, as it were, is a first, and it's a great engraving job. You've got the Capitol back here, you've got the flag, you've got arrows, you've got all types of stuff in here. And the face of it and the reverse are I call masterful. So once again, these were very popular notes, and just like the Martha Washingtons, only more so, 3 billion of these notes were printed over 20 years. So this eagle design had been used on another illustration way back in 1876, and they used it as a central piece and then added to it. Okay, so in order to produce all of these notes, the BEP had a talented group of engravers. 3 of them stand out as exceptional artists. Charles Burt, who was born in Scotland in 1823, was a great engraver and artist. And the thing that he's known for is this engraving of Abraham Lincoln, which is the same engraving that is used in our $5 bills today and in many other places. By the way, I tried to find pictures of these people. They're just, no matter what I did, I couldn't find them. So you're just going to have to take my word for it that they're real people. Charles Flint, and I'm sure I massacred that, was born in Germany in the 1840s. And he's best known for an engraving of the Holy Family with St. Anne and the infant St. John the Baptist. And this engraving is hanging in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So this guy was a pretty big player, and he did some great work for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. And lastly, we had a homegrown person, George Simile, always went by GFC, Simile. He was born in New York, so a native, and he was best known for engraving the bison note, which many of you have seen before, I'm sure. It's quite different as well, but there's a story that goes with that, but it's not part of the silver certificate story. So I'm going to give you the references now, although we're not done with the talk. There's a lot of money. Oh, so excuse me. There's a lot of references that go over and plow the same ground again and again. But I do want to mention that the numbers for numbering these bills are in the Freeburg scale. Ira, now I'm running a blank here, but the Freeburgs came up with a numbering scale that's used for all paper money. And from each one of these sources, I gained something to add to the collection. So we can answer questions now. I've still got lots of time. How about we hold them for a couple of minutes more and I talk about my collection? So I've been sort of busily collecting these bills over the last couple of years. And I've got a Martha Washington, the 1886 flavor of Martha Washington, not the 91. And I've got the educational series, History Instructs Youth, with, by the way, the same engraving of Martha Washington and this very familiar George Washington on the reverse that you'll see on many other bills, but it's the same engraving again and again. So, of course, the Black Eagle, which you've seen before. I picked up a 1923 silver certificate. This one here, it's a $1 bill that almost looks like your small size, but the reverse is unique. And of course, this is a large size. So it's not the same. And of course, the reverse is unique. Each one of these reverses of all the silver certificates, no two are alike. So I'm going to apologize for this. I couldn't find a really good picture of this note. So I took this in desperation with my cell phone. It's not that good, but it is give you an idea that it's unique. And this bill is sort of rare. This one in a 63 grade, it cost me $4,000. So you see, we have here George Washington again. Same. I took this as a porthole. I think somebody else has got a different note that they talk about as the porthole note. But there's George on a $2 bill and a unique reverse again. Of course, I have one of these. These bills in higher grades are pretty pricey, but they're absolutely beautiful. And if you can get one that's worth the it's worth the investment, because in the higher grades, these are just going to continue to appreciate. On the reverse of this, they have Ulysses S. Grant and General Sherman. Once again, running antelope. It's really killer note. It looks really good all the time. So a lot of people like to make nicknames for these notes. This particular note is referred to as a tombstone note because of the way that the picture is in, and they figure it looks like a tombstone. So this was a purchase that a little pricey, but it's not as much as it could be. So I have time for questions. Do we have questions?
Yeah, there are a couple
Okay.
that I will read out and just let you answer.
Okay.
So why are the backs of 1891 notes less ornate than the backs of 1886 notes?
Well, the answer is because they felt like it.
Yeah.
Actually, the answer is they wanted more white space, because the very intricate designs, people get lost in them and they would counterfeit really ornate designs. The educational series that I showed you, these guys and the 5 are only lasted for 3 years in circulation. Why? Because the bills were so busy that people didn't realize when somebody counterfeited them that there was something wrong. There's just so much stuff there. So they tried to go to more open designs for anti-counterfeiting. And being that this bill was so busy and the others in this series were so busy, the automatic counting machines that the banks had wouldn't read them. And that put the nail in the coffin.
Hmm.
So it only lasted for 3 years before the Black Eagle and the rest of the 1899 uh, series came out.
Okay. Why do you think paper money became so boring in the art department?
I don't have a good answer for that. Um, Other countries, European Union, etc., comes out with new designs and a series of new designs every umpteen years. And in fact, the European Union has got, as of I think last year, has new designs for their bills, for their paper money, and they have it in all different colors and sizes. And I just have to say that the Bureau of Engraving and Printing has been taking the easy way out. Uh, there has been calls to have number one Braille dots on bills, and number two going to different sizes, etc. But I don't know that anybody is ready to bite the bullet. So I don't have a really good answer for that.
Phil, it just occurred to me. Do you mind stop sharing your screen so we can come
All
back to
right,
you?
stop share.
Thank
There we
you.
go.
All right. All right. We do have some more questions. So I have,
Sure.
what comparisons can you make to gold notes or gold certificates?
So gold certificates or gold notes um, were primarily not for circulation. They were primarily to use between banks. I mean, people in the lower, I've seen $10 and $20 gold certificates that people held, but uh, quite honestly, they're primarily for commerce between big entities rather than you have a folding $20 gold note in your pocket.
Hmm. Okay. The silk threads, what would be a good way to find them in large size notes?
So the best way actually is to look on the edges. Um, that's where you start anyway. So you have white around, and if you look carefully on the edges, primarily, I always look on the right side first. But if you look carefully on the edges, usually about a third of the way down, you'll see one silk thread going across, and another third of the way down, another. But you have to look close because it is literally just one thread. So they're there, and they're if you really want to tell whether it's real or not, if you've got a note with a silk thread in it, it's real. So
Great. Perfect. What is considered to be the rarest of the large silver certificates?
oh, you know, I don't know the exact answer, but I
Yeah.
do know that if you want to get $100 silver certificate from from 1878, you better come with a wheelbarrow full of money. So the larger denominations in the early years were pretty rare.
For a beginner, what 2 or 3 notes would you recommend for the large size 1800s silver certificates?
So the first place to go was a 1923 silver certificate. I had one up here. I picked it up a 63. The grading scale goes to 70, just like coins. But I picked one of those up in 63 for $250. You can look, uh, let me see here. You can look to get the Black Eagle note in good condition for $220, $250, somewhere in there. You can look to get, oh, That $2 Washington, now we're going to start to getting a little bit pricier. The $2 Washington that I showed you from 1899 for around $700. And it's all, by the way, has to do with grade. Okay, so these that I'm talking about are generally 40 or more as far as grade goes. I don't have any that are lesser than that because they just don't look as nice, and I can afford them. So those are the ones that I would start with. They're the lower end, dollars and cents. That $10. I mean, some of these are really expensive. The $10 note that I have cost me $4,600. And the educational series, the Band in Boston note, that one is a sort of a high demand note, and that one cost me $5,500. So some of these can get very pricey. The ones that I noted to you are cheaper and a good place to start. You can get good quality and make a decision whether you want to start getting into it. So that the average grade for these notes is a 25, which is not terrific, but you can get them. They're a lot cheaper than what I cited. It all depends on what you're happy with. Okay, what else?
Do the horizontal silk threads you spoke of run the full length of the note?
Yes, they do. They run from one side to the other, and you have to look closely for them, but they're there, especially in the designs. You know, they've got ink on them. That's why if you want to look and find them, start at the either the right or the left and look for them in the white space.
On some of the notes, it looked like there was thin red and blue lines on them, similar to what we see today. Was I seeing things?
Oh, well, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing has been using little multicolored threads in their paper, and their paper is not paper, it's cotton, by the way. They've been using those little red and blue threads since almost the beginning of printing paper notes, which started in 1861.
Okay. How did they decide the size to use for the large and small notes?
I have no clue.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that if you look at the large size notes now, people say, people must have had bigger wallets then. and the answer is yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. This holding money was a bigger deal. And how they decided that, I really don't know. I know that they wanted to save money on printing, which it's hard for me to believe, and have easier handling, and that's why they wanted to go to smaller notes. But how they came up with the size, I really have no idea. I'm sorry to whoever asked that question that I can't answer.
Yeah, that's okay. Is there a book that gives the values of notes like the Red Book?
Yes, there is. And it's Freeberg's Guide to Paper Money. It's the best book on the market. I'm going to grab one off the shelf. You guys will be able to see it.
Sure.
Maybe
Yeah,
if
we
I
see
come
the
back.
top part of it.
Yeah. So it's Paper Money in the United States, a complete illustrated guides with valuations. Arthur L. and Ira Freeberg and Robert Freeberg, their dad, was the original person that put this book out in the numbering systems. And this is the best of them around. Now, they get out of date. So every few years, if you really want to keep up with it, you got to buy another one, but it's not a lot of money. So for your 30, if you're interested in spending thousands of dollars on paper money, it's worth $30.
Right. Yeah. Somebody wants to know what's the best way to keep notes, like to preserve them.
So just like coins, you want to keep your notes. Well, first thing, if they're graded, they already come in a sealed, hard case. Okay. And most of my notes, almost all of them are graded except a couple. But if you don't have graded notes, then you want to have a stiff non-PVC plastic sleeve in them, and then store them in some places it's going to have low humidity. So the box, it's not just putting them on the shelf and whatever. The box that you put them in, the folders actually have to be sulfur free and airtight as far as humidity goes.
Okay. And then is it better to buy graded?
Oh, I've always bought graded because I didn't know how myself. This past year at summer seminar, I took a course on grading paper money. So I feel a lot more comfortable now. The tougher notes to find are almost always graded. The bigger value notes are almost always graded. You'll find them at different shows that are ungraded, but then you're taking a chance on what the grade really is.
Mm-hmm.
And like buying a car or a bicycle or anything else, you need to know what things are worth before you go buy them.
Right.
Having a paper money grading book, and if you don't know how to grade paper money, then you better be buying graded stuff already. So I can look at some notes and I can tell what the grade should be, and therefore I can go and find out what the value is.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that answers the question.
I think it did. I think that's it, Phil. So I just
That's
want to
it.
say, yeah, I want to say thanks. I want to say thanks for everybody for joining us. Be sure you check on our website, see what's upcoming on NumismaTalks. We'll be back here second and fourth Thursday of every month, except for Thanksgiving falls on the fourth Thursday, so not in November.
Not in November.
Every other. So
thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for answering your questions. And I wish. I have a note here, a correction. Ali sent me a note saying, "Hi, I believe a $5 note that pictures of U.S. Grant and General Phil Sheridan. You said it was General Sherman. You are right. It's Sheridan." So what else? I have another question here. We got a second? We got
sure, go ahead.
So why is there a price difference between 1890 and 1891-2 and $5 notes? Well, part of it is demand. Okay, the $5 note is in demand, and it pushes the price up. And the $2 note, which I think is sort of plain, other people agree with me, and there's not as much demand. So while we're talking about the same amount of printing, we're talking about people are wanting to pay more for stuff that's in demand more, worth more. Okay, now I think I can get off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.